Hello, welcome to Roussel Reads. I'm Deja, and today we are going to do a recent read. Today, I wanted to go through all of the books that I have read so far in 2025. That will be 12 books. 12 books may seem like a lot, and I'm very proud that I've read 12 books, considering that I was in a reading slump pretty much this entire year. But a lot of them are shorter reads and just things that I'll probably be talking through like very quickly. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into this video. The first book that I read for this year was Celestial Bodies. This one I did mention in my romanticy video, and despite skimming a lot of it, it was the only book that I completed. So it counts on this list. I won't go too in depth about it because I feel like I covered a lot of what my problems were in this book, but I just did not really like the dynamic between the two characters. It just felt like a very stereotypical fantasy romance of basically a headstrong girl and a shadow daddy dynamic. Like, it just wasn't really for me. Pair that with the fact that I don't think that the magic system was very like fleshed out, and like the politics wasn't really fleshed out, and the plot just had pacing issues, and it was just a lot of different things that just really deteriorated my enjoyment of this one. So I gave it 3 stars. The next one that I read was Artifice, which is a graphic novel that I read on Kindle Unlimited. And this one follows a robot that is programmed to kill this entire, I want to say, like laboratory. There's like a laboratory of scientists that he's supposed to be killing. And basically, the story is him talking to like a counselor or something, trying to figure out like how and why he did not follow his programming to kill every single person in the lab because he left one person alive. It was a very interesting story, and I really did like it. It is a male-male relationship that is portrayed in this one, and I just thought it was like just cute. I really just enjoyed exploring that dynamic of a robot that is basically programmed to kill the love interest, but he ends up not doing it. And just yeah, I really liked it. So highly recommend that one. I gave it 4 stars. The next one that I read is a novella called This World Is Not Yours. And this is one that I had very interesting thoughts about. To describe the story would be kind of hard just because I feel like there was 2 different stories in this one. Like on one hand, you're following a sapphic relationship that is in trouble. Like they're just having trouble like communicating with each other, and then they also have some like sci-fi elements that make it hard for them to be together because they are forced to pretty much breed to keep up the population on this colony that they are on. But then on the other hand, there's also a little bit of a plot of like what they're studying on this new planet that they have colonized. And yeah, it was a very interesting mix. I like the idea of this, but like I said, like these 2 different storylines, like I don't think that they really mesh together well. In the beginning, I think that you really get more of like the scientific exploratory elements of what they're trying to study. And then in the middle, it really goes heavy into like the sapphic relationship and trouble before it goes into the sci-fi elements again. Like I just felt like blending those things together was not meshing well for me. I like the stories like separately, and I wish that it would have just been like one or the other in terms of the story that it was trying to tell, because I don't think that with cramming both of those storylines into one novella, I don't think it was long enough to really like delve into what it actually needed to delve into for those storylines to really be developed. But like I said, I still feel like this was a very interesting sci-fi read, and the thing that they are studying is a very like interesting creature that it was just a fascinating read. Like I really liked the world that it was in, and I'm intrigued to read more by this author. They seem to be very much into sci-fi, so I'm happy that a lot more Black authors are writing in the sci-fi space. So I will definitely read more by this author, but unfortunately, this one was just more of a 3.5 star read for me just because of those elements that I mentioned. The next one that I read was also a little novella that's more like a short story, and this one is called Let Me Down Slowly. I got this one for free. I want to say it was kind of like the author's lead magnet or something, but this is basically a prequel to the author's main work. And this story follows a guy who's kind of flipping back and forth between the story of how he met his wife and got together with her and what is happening in the present with her basically being like haunted by something that he can't really comprehend. This one I also had a mixed thoughts about just in terms of like how they mix the elements together. I don't necessarily feel like we needed to have that background story of like how they got together. It was actually like my least favorite part of the story because when they meet, like they have like a little bit of an age gap. Like I want to say she's 16 when they meet while he's 18. And while it's not a huge age difference, just in terms of the actual like age numbers, like I did not like that, especially because I'm pretty sure that's illegal in all 50 states. Just seeing that like background of like when they actually got together, it made it hard for me to like really like care about their relationship, which I don't think was necessarily like the point of the story. Like I feel like you really are trying to understand like his wife is like haunted and how it's like impacting the family and all of that. And that part was fine, but I feel like that should have been just like the main story instead of trying to add all of this background information that really did not add anything to the story except to make me just annoyed that they were together in the first place. So I gave this one 3 stars, and like I don't know, it's a prequel to a young adult novel, I'm pretty sure, but if you are interested in reading the next book in this series, I don't know what it's actually called, but I'll put it on the screen. But if you are interested in reading that one, I guess I would just say skip this one because I don't think it really provided any information that you really needed. But I could be wrong since I didn't actually read the next book. The next one that I read was a historical fiction called The Lotus Shoes. And this one I got as an ARC on NetGalley, so thank you to the publisher for that. I gave this one 3.5 stars, and this one follows two girls who basically like grow up together. One is a muizai, which is basically like a lady's servant who basically attends to like all of the ladies of the house needs. And then the other girl is the lady that she is supposed to be serving. They are around the same age, so they're basically like growing up together, but one is rich and one is poor. And this is set during a time when they are starting to get outside influence into like their culture. So I believe it was England that was really influencing them in this book, but I read this a few months ago, so kind of blanking on a few of like the details, but that's important because basically in this early time, like it was very much preferred for Chinese women to bind their feet and make them as like small as possible. And reading those scenes was very uncomfortable because the way that they would bind their feet would really like harm their development of it. So basically, these two girls are living in 1800s China with all of these expectations on like what it means to be like a lady and to have like a good upbringing while all of these outside influences are basically coming in and influencing their lives. It was an interesting dynamic to see the perspectives of a servant of a lady plus the actual lady who was growing up in these societies. Like, even though they are together a lot of the time, I think that they each have their own drive. And it was like very fascinating to just like see that. I will say that a lot of this book felt super slow. The first part of this book actually takes place when they are children, and then you are basically hearing the story about them until they are fully grown and living their separate lives. And there's like drama between them. One of the characters was definitely a spoiled brat, and it was very hard to like her. But again, she was a very strong character, so I can appreciate the author for writing that. But like I said, like the pacing was the detriment of this book. Like it would pick up, like something would happen, and then it would slow down considerably again, and then it would pick up a little bit and then slow down considerably. Like I just feel like we did not need to meander so much, and then by the end, like it just felt a little too fast the way that it wrapped up. And I don't know, like it was interesting exploring the different ways that Chinese women basically had to choose to live in this society that really prioritized having golden lilies while also trying to be progressive and not having golden lilies, and just that like tension that it brought between the women and trying to figure out if they wanted to be married, like just the different life paths that they could actually take. Like it was interesting exploring that, but the way that the story was told in terms of like how we got to like see those different paths, like the pacing was just way too slow. The next two books that I read were just nonfiction books about newsletter management. Both are called Newsletter Ninja, but one is like just like an overall one on how to be an expert or something, and then the next one is just all about like your lead magnet and stuff for that. I decided to read these just because I am starting to basically set up like my authorship like journey stuff. But honestly, I don't think that these were worth reading that much. I think a blog post could have told you pretty much everything that you needed to know in these books. So yeah, I mean, I gave them like 3 stars, but honestly, I don't think it was worth it. The next one that I read was another novella that was the start of a new series. I think the series is called the Lady Widow series, and the first one is Death Among the Stars by C.M. Lockhart. And this one I had mixed thoughts about. This one is following a woman named Kyra who lost her husband, and so she's really dealing with her grief while also wanting to exact revenge. And this one, I will say, I had mixed thoughts about, and I think again it was the pacing that I struggled with this one. The beginning, you're really focused on her grief, which I appreciated, but I also did not think that it needed to be as long as it needed to be to really explore. Like, okay, yes, I am grieving. Like, I just didn't really feel that grief, I will say. Like, it was very much like her numbing herself almost like the entire time, and that was not for me. Like I was just starting to get bored with it, despite the fact that this was a very short read. And then we get like some new information, and then I feel like once you get that information, like the story just feels so fast. Like I feel like it wrapped up way too quickly, especially considering how slow the beginning was. But I still think that this was a strong start to a series. And since we have like gotten past that point of like exploring and like setting up like this is like her grief and stuff, I feel like the second book will probably be better. I'm hoping so. So I will continue the next series, but otherwise, I gave this one 3 stars. The next one that I read was another nonfiction, and this book was Self Care for Black Women. This one I wanted to pick up just because I feel like I am trying to be more intentional with my self care and not burn myself out as much. I'm notoriously bad at like doing everything but taking care of myself. So I'm trying to be better at that. And this book just basically gives you a list of ideas of how you can take care of your mind, your soul, and your body. Just little paragraph excerpts of just like how you can take care of yourself. I liked it for what it was. I gave it 4 stars. It was just a book of ideas basically, and it was just a short, quick read that I did take some notes about like, okay, yeah, I can take care of myself this way, and like it doesn't always have to look the same on how you take care of yourself. So yeah, 4 stars. It was a good, quick nonfiction read. And then I read Death Note Volume 8. I won't go into too much detail about like what happens in this book because it is volume 8, but things are definitely picking up. I still very much enjoy the series. It did slog a little bit for me. I want to say in like the 4 through 6, like 4 through 6, like those volumes really slowed for me. But I think because we are nearing the end, the manga is definitely picking up for me. And I still feel like I prefer just some of the dynamics that were in the earlier books, but I feel like I'm starting to get that dynamic a little bit more in this later book, but I don't know. We'll see how it wraps up, like towards the end, because yeah, the series has taken a turn that I did not think that it would go in. But I am enjoying this manga series and I do plan to finish it this year. And then the next book that I read was Ambessa, Chosen of the Wolf. This one is part of the League of Legends world, Arcane, and I really, really love that TV show. Not necessarily the second season, like I still like the second season, but the first season had like my heart. Like I really loved the first season. And I really loved the Medardas. So when I heard that there was a book about Ambessa, who is the mother in the Medarda family, I was just like, I have to read this. So this book takes place before the Arcane TV show, and it's really following Ambessa, who's basically trying to be like the leader of the Medarda clan, but it's like a power struggle because it can either go to her cousin or it can go to her. And it's basically just her trying to get the throne. This one I will say that I did like, but I had just a few problems with it. I will say that I really liked that it humanized Ambessa. To me in the TV show, she came off very like one note to me, just very much like a ruthless leader that would do anything to get what she wants and everything. Like I just feel like there wasn't much depth to her character, which I did not like seeing in terms of just representation for a black woman. And I feel like the book did a good job at humanizing her a little bit more. Like I think you see more of like how much she does care for her family and just like some of the guilt and stuff that she does have. Like I really appreciate it that the book humanized her a lot more. Now, one of my problems with this book is that I wish that it would have did a little bit more with like the character dynamics. I think Arcane was great in like balancing those like character motivations with like the world building and with like the just speculative plot that was happening with like the magic, and I just feel like those elements were not very balanced here. I think that it could have been like a very interesting dynamic just to see more of like how she is with like her children, but like that's not really the focus of the story, or even if they didn't want to focus on just like the strained relationship that we see in the Arcane TV show, I think that they still kind of focus a little bit more on just like the other relationships that she had with just a lot of the people in this book, to be honest, or even just like the guilt that she was playing with before. Like I feel like it shows up in this book in terms of like her character, but I feel like it was more towards the beginning and the end that you really see the character parts of like Ambessa, and then in the middle it kind of gets lost with all of these like battle scenes that are happening and just all of these like political things happening, and I just feel like the character got lost in those scenes. Pair that with the fact that I feel like the pacing was a little bit off. There was a lot of moving parts in this story, but I think that it got so heavy in just like the politics of everything that like some of the elements that were introduced, like I feel like they were just introduced to go into like another part of the world that we might get in the later books. Like I thought that I would be getting more with like the Rose Society, especially because that is more of like the bigger villain in terms of like what Ambessa was dealing with in the TV show. But you don't get much about them. Like I feel like they're mostly like hinted at, but it is more about like this ploy for the throne and trying to get that back. But like even then, I feel like that was just so not even like a main like focus of the story. Like I just feel like there was just so many things happening that like nothing really was like this is what the story is about. Like I still liked it. I gave it 4 stars, but like I just wanted a little bit more. I feel like the world building was good, but just with like the pacing issues and just like the things that were like introduced, I just feel like there was just more that could have been done. I would still recommend it, especially if you love the arcane world, because like I said, it does seem like it's setting up for like other things that are going to be mentioned in probably later books or other parts of this world. But yeah, it was a decent book. And the last one that I have to talk about is The Nightward by RSA Garcia. This one is basically following 2 characters who are on the run from these people that have taken over the queendom in this world. the princess, who is one of the main characters, is the next heir, and there's supposed to be like magic like transferring to her that the villains are trying to prevent. I will say that this one was a very fast-paced fantasy, which was a nice change from the slow action of a lot of the other books that I was reading. But a lot of the action, it happens like pretty much like back to back. Like there's so much like stuff going on in this book. And it follows a large cast of characters, despite the fact that it really just is focused on these two characters. One character is a bodyguard named Luca, who has some kind of like secret like powers, and the other one is the princess of the queendom that was taken over. I had a hard time like connecting with like any of the characters. I feel like you're not really getting a lot of like what drives them. Like they're pretty much just on the run. They have to get to safety, which of course that is perfectly fine. But I struggled with especially like the princess's point of view because she is a child. So there's not a lot of things that she actually does. Like she's just there. And I don't really like that. And also I did not really like her voice in the book. Like I always get weird whenever authors in adult fantasy specifically try to write children because yeah, I don't know. She wasn't working for me in terms of her point of view. In terms of Luca, I think that he was better, but again, like I don't think that he really had like purpose until maybe I would say like 30% into the book, maybe 30 to 40%. And in the back of the book, like you are pretty much told that he has like some kind of secret, which isn't really mentioned until like much later in the book. But yeah, I just had a hard time like disconnecting with any of the characters and like their drives and just any of that. Even like just some of the side perspectives. I don't know. I kind of like the villain, but I'm also like, I don't even remember his name like that, and I only read this like a few weeks ago, so I don't necessarily think I connected with any of the people. It had some interesting magic things happening, and I'm still very curious to see like how the rest of the series like wraps up, especially with just how everything like went. Like I'm very curious to see like where the second book goes. Yeah, I just had some trouble in the middle parts of this book. So yeah, 3.5 stars. But that will wrap up the rest of this video. If you have read any of these, I would love to hear what your thoughts were. And if you don't want to leave a comment about any of the books that I've read, you can also just leave a book emoji just because, you know, we're reading some books. And that is a huge feat, especially with the state of like pretty much everybody in a reading slump right now. But I thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in my next video. Bye.